So you might remember at I showed you the sacred path in Heraion, and here it is actually again, appearing again, just as you enter the sanctuary of Hera. Now, why call it a sanctuary? It was a temple, okay? And look how big the stones are. That's not why I'm here. The reason why I'm here is because if you're a big sports fan in the United States, and you like your team a lot, they will say to you, don't be such a homer. Yeah, and that's sort of an insult. But the reason why I'm here today again, I was here last year, I made another video, is to continue not being such a homer. Why do I say that? Partly to be funny and partly to be truthful. So this Hera temple, the earliest manifestations of it appear around 800 years before the Common Era. And then it was recreated and recreated and recreated. And at one time, it was the biggest temple in the whole Hellenic Greek Empire. By far, it was massive. It was just enormous. And you can see by the size of the street that the traffic came from there, from the harbor port. And the pilgrims would walk in here, the 6 kilometers, and then enter this incredible temple here, which was enormous. And on the sides, there would be places where they'd have either concessions, you know, or even when we enter deeper, we're going to see there were other temples built over the years. Now, the fact is that Hera is the goddess of the gods. Okay, she's known in the Greek mythology as the wife of Zeus. Now we have a problem there. Why is she known like that? And why is she often belittled as being somebody who's jealous and envious and vengeful? Well, there's a good explanation. Hera pre-exists Zeus by quite a bit. She belongs to a collection of goddesses who predominated all through Anatolia and the Greek islands, which are called Chthonic goddesses. Chthonic is a Greek word which means earth. And Chthonic goddesses, there are a number of them. I can list them all practically because it's my passion, including Hera. They have nothing to do with Greek mythology. Actually, they belong much more to Anatolia. And you can include to that list Hecate, Sibylla, Kabila, Artemis, and many others. Now, where is the confusion? The confusion actually comes from a blind man who was actually a seer. So we're not sure if Homer wrote the Iliad and Odyssey. We believe he did, and he's actually venerated as nearly a god. He was pre-Greek, and he was also around 800 years before the Common Era. Okay, and now this is Roman time. And the thing is that Homer, who everybody has to read as one of the classics, basically as scripture, seemed to have an agenda. And forgive me if I'm allowed to say this against Homer. He wanted to write or dictate probably texts which would place Zeus above Hera, and he wanted to dictate texts which placed Artemis actually below Apollo. And the fact is that if we go back 800 years before the Common Era, the primary gods and goddesses, actually they were goddesses, were all Chthonic. And they were all independent. In other words, they had no male counterpart, okay? But with the Iliad and the Odyssey, we had a whole new theology develop, as we all know, okay? And so Homer seemed to have an issue with the divine feminine, a major issue actually, because he didn't want, he wanted Hera to play second fiddle to Zeus, and even Artemis to play second fiddle to Apollo. And Artemis is complicated as well, because we have Artemis from Ephesus, where I'm going to be traveling tomorrow, who is also an Anatolian goddess going way, way, way back, going back to Sibylla and even going further back to places like Chthonic. And you know, I'm sorry that I'm ranting, but I was just, I'm actually looking for property here to build a center, and I was just getting, I'm ashamed to say this, but I was getting so pissed off with Homer for his manipulation of history, you know. Sounds strange, but I was, because Hera was, for the people 800 years before the Common Era, was the Alpha and the Omega, in as much as she was the primary goddess, and she was very powerful. Chthonic goddesses all have something to do with the earth, you know, the underworld. And even the underworld, back then, when the Chthonic goddesses reigned, was not a bad place, and to the contrary. Only when we have the Odyssey and Iliad do we have the underworld controlled by Hades. So you have to be careful these days about what you read, because I normally associate the development of patriarchy with the Judeo-Christian traditions, okay? But it happened way before then. It happened with Homer, who existed 800 years before the Common Era. And here's a good example of it, because this temple was enormous, you know, and people would come all over from the Mediterranean Sea and from Anatolia to visit and honor Hera as a goddess who had no male counterpart, you know. That happened later. She had no male counterpart, you know. And now, like I said, what we do to Hera is we make her a laughingstock because she's so jealous because her husband's sleeping with all these mortal women, you know. And even Artemis and Apollo, you know, I have no problem with Apollo, but Artemis from Ephesia has no brother, you know. We only say that they have this brother, she has a brother, because of the Odyssey and Iliad, okay? I mean, somebody, if you care about this, you can find out about it. And you can see there's been a big game going on. And it's not a nice game, actually. Because alone with Artemis, who I have a great passion for over the years, she is an absolute Chthonic goddess at her core, you know. And now we have this massive confusion, nearly schizophrenic, about Artemis, either as this unbelievable goddess from Ephesia, or as this goddess who was later called by the Romans Diana, running around with a miniskirt hunting deer, you know. And so this is the whole confusion, and it has a lot to do with the Iliad and Odyssey from Homer. That's where it started to get really contorted. And I don't know what to think of this now. You know, when I come here, I used to come here actually, the first time I came here like 6 years ago, I wanted to make peace with Hera for scaring the living daylights out of Leto when she was about to give birth to Artemis and Apollo. And then I realized my whole relationship with Hera has to change, because Hera is actually one of the major goddesses in recent times, you know, along with Artemis. And even Hecate, who is probably the goddess of the underworld and crossroads, amazing goddess, you know. At least they didn't incorporate her into the Roman belief systems. The Romans co-opted all of these goddesses, including Isis and not Hera, but definitely Artemis. And I don't know, this is all so bewildering. I don't know what to think of it. But when you come to this temple, you see something built in honor of a Chthonic goddess who was a life giver and life protector, and has nothing to do with the Hera that we know about, thanks to a blind man who was also a seer, who had a definite agenda. End rant.